Hi, I'm Pat Montgomery. I'm your host for Parents Rule video blog. I'm a business owner and I'm author of the book, Now You Know What I Know, Parenting Wisdom of a Grandmother, that can be found on Amazon and anywhere else. My website, which is parentsrulewithpat.com. Today we're going to be talking about Boomerang Kids. What are Boomerang Kids? Well, they're kids that have lived away from home, went to college, went to the military, whatever, and now they've moved back home. I was recently asked if this was an increasing trend, and it actually is. In 2009, 1 in 6 households had 2 adult generations living there. That's a 30% increase in 10 years. So, is it the economy? My guess is yes. More college kids can't find jobs. People are losing their homes because they're losing their jobs. Can't find new jobs. It's a real problem. And they're finding solutions by moving in together. And is this a good thing? No, maybe. I was on a radio show last week and we were talking about this. One of the things they asked me was what I would recommend if kids wanted to move back home. And, it's a difficult issue, and there's a lot of emotions involved there. If a kid's just moving home, they finish college, can't get a job, and they move back in, then that's not quite the same as maybe somebody who has moved away from home, maybe got married, had a job, lost their job through no fault of their own, lost their home, and now they're having to move back in with mom and dad. It's very demeaning, it's very demoralizing, a lot of emotional issues. There's a loss of privacy, there's a loss of self-esteem. It's very difficult, and there's because of all of that in play, I think it's very important to have a plan, and that's what I told them on the radio show was, well, let's have a plan. Let's sit down and discuss this. The most important thing to remember is it has to work for everybody that's involved. If you have other children at home, if they're bringing children with them, it has to work for everyone. So you sit down, you pull everyone together that has a stake in this, and sit down at the kitchen table and talk and say, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work? This is what I need to happen. What do you need to happen? And, because somebody who's been on their own and they had their own job and they had their own home, they're not used to asking mom and dad if they can stay out after 10 o'clock at night. It's just not going to happen. So you got to have a plan. And the next thing you're going to ask me is what's in the plan, are you? All right. Well, finances are a big thing. If you are living in your own home and you've been there for a long time, you kind of have a routine for your finances, you kind of have a routine for this and that. Maybe you're on a fixed income and now these kids are moving home. It's going to be more difficult. So you got to talk about it. Are they still working? Do they have any job prospects? What are they going to do about getting a job? How much are they going to financially contribute to the home? Remember, these are adults. You're not raising them any longer. That's already been done. They're adults basically renting a room from you. And you got to think about it like that. So yes, definitely charge them rent. You can defer that rent for a few months while they look for a job. You can take the rent money and use it to help cover the cost of them living there. I mean, obviously, utilities are going to be more and everything else is going to go up. Or you could put that aside if you're financially able and not even tell them, but just let it accumulate for the length of time that they're with you. And then give it to them as a little nest egg to take with them. It'll be a big bonus for them, and you'll feel good about doing that. The reason you need to charge the rent is they need to have that sense of responsibility. Now, especially if they're just coming out of college. They need to understand that they're not moving back in with you and you're not mommy anymore. Okay? They are renting a room from you. And so you got to talk in your plan about how you're going to divide up the chores, because sitting on the couch and doing nothing is not acceptable. You got to talk to them about what's their plan about finding more work, getting a job, figuring out how they're going to stand on their own. You may set up a time once a week to sit down and talk to them about their finances. Maybe the reason that they have moved back home is because they weren't wise in the way they handled their finances. So without being overly intrusive, there may be a way that you can help them learn how to manage their finances better. Have a time frame also. Say, okay, how long do you think you're going to need to live here? And if they say 6 months, then great, 6 months, and then you're out of here. Of course, that can always be adjusted up or down, depending on how things go. One of the most important things to remember as you put all this together is that you're a family. And when this is over, you still want to be a family. That's why having this plan is so important. Things you need to discuss include even common courtesy things. If they're going to spend the night out or be home late, you're still parents, even though you're just renting them a room. You're still going to worry. So they need to call you and tell you. They need to clean up after themselves. They need to prepare meals. They need to do all kinds of discuss how it's going to affect other family members. Maybe there are younger siblings still living at home, and they have actually moved into that one's bedroom, and now they're going to have to move back in together so that the older sibling can have their room back. Well, that's going to be difficult, and something like that could very easily happen. So that has to be discussed. What if they're bringing pets with them? You don't like dogs and cats. You never had them at home, and the minute they moved out, they bought a dog. Well, now guess who's coming to live with you? Fido's coming, and you've got to discuss that. What are the rules for this pet? Who's going to take care of it? Who's going to pay for the vet bills? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do what? Very, very important to have all of that clear from the get-go. And I would do all this before they move in, by the way. Another issue, what if they're bringing children with them and their spouse? That sets up a whole new set of issues. It'd be fun having the grandkids around, but if you're not used to that kind of noise all the time, that's going to take some adjustment on your part. Maybe they raise their children different than you raised yours, and where you might want to discipline a child one way, they say, oh, no, we don't do that in our house. So you kind of have to abide by their rules, and that all needs to be discussed up front. Are you going to be the babysitter for this child, or are they going to need to find other child care while they're looking for jobs or working? I talked about the discipline issues. Just how are you going to accommodate all these bodies is one thing you've got to talk about. I would also recommend setting up a family meeting time. Once a week, once a month, whatever works, just in order to have a time to sit down and discuss how things are going. Is this working for you? Is this not working? How can we make this better? If everything's rolling along just fine, then don't worry about that. But I would set that up initially, and then you can let it go if you need to, if you don't need it. But if you need it, I think it's very important. Another thing I want to tell you, and this is hard to say and it's hard to hear, but don't ever ask your grown child to move back in your house if you're not willing to tell them to move out. There may just be times when things get untenable and it just doesn't work for either of you, but they don't want to move because they're comfortable, they're not paying much rent, they're not paying utilities, they're sailing along pretty good, but it's not working. And everybody's miserable and everybody's unhappy. And you've got to ask them to leave. Now, that's not going to be easy, But you have to understand, if you can't do that, then don't ask them to move in. Just don't do it. Just don't go there. One big thing to never ask a child to move back in is if you know that they are conducting illegal activities, dangerous activities that could put you in jeopardy, such as drug use, drug sales. They have, they're out shoplifting, stealing, whatever. Don't bring them in. Just don't do it. It's just going to make your life miserable, and it's going to be dangerous for you. Don't ever pick up after them. That has to be in the plan. They have to pick up their drawers off the stairway and put them in the laundry hamper. They have to do their own laundry. I know this sounds awful and hard and cold, and it's really, really not. For the majority of families, they'll just sit around the table and say, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that, and it'll be really easy. And again, I just want to remind you that you're a family, and you want to still be a family when this is over. So it's very, very important to have this understanding up front. And I'll be talking to you soon. And this is Parents Rule. See you later.